NEC Section 210.52C5 addresses receptacle outlet placement for island countertops. Specifically, it dictates whether or not a receptacle outlet is required on an island counter. There is an exception to rule number 5. This exception states that a receptacle outlet is not required on an island counter if the counter is less than 24 inches from a receptacle outlet on a wall or cabinet. To determine if the exception applies, one must measure the distance from any point on the island counter's edge to the nearest receptacle outlet located on a wall or cabinet. If that distance is less than 24 inches, then a receptacle outlet on the island is not mandatory. However, the provided example involves an island counter that is 4 feet by 2 feet with a countertop that extends to 6 feet by 4 feet. The question centers on whether a receptacle outlet is required on this island given these dimensions. Assuming that the island counter is not less than 24 inches from a receptacle outlet on a wall or cabinet, then a receptacle outlet is indeed required on the counter. This means that the exception in NEC 210.52C5 would not apply in this particular scenario. Given the requirement for a receptacle outlet, the method of installation becomes relevant. The individual posting this question suggests using either plugmold or wiremold receptacles. These are indeed acceptable methods for installing receptacle outlets on island counters, particularly when conventional wall box mounting is not feasible. Plugmold is a type of multi-outlet strip that can be mounted along the countertop's edge or underneath the countertop overhang, providing multiple receptacle outlets along its length. Wiremold generally refers to a surface-mounted raceway system, which can also house receptacle outlets. Both plugmold and wiremold options offer a practical solution for adding receptacle outlets to island counters while adhering to electrical code requirements. It is important to note that any installation should comply with all applicable NEC requirements, including proper grounding, conductor sizing, and overcurrent protection. To summarize, if the island counter is not less than 24 inches from an existing receptacle outlet, NEC 210.52C5 mandates a receptacle outlet on the island. Plugmold and wiremold are both acceptable methods for installing this receptacle outlet, as long as all other applicable code requirements are met. Consider the following points for a comprehensive understanding. Firstly, verify the applicable local amendments to the NEC. Local jurisdictions may have amendments or modifications to the NEC that could affect the interpretation or application of this code section. Secondly, confirm the specific dimensions of the countertop and its proximity to existing receptacle outlets. Accurate measurements are essential in determining whether the exception to NEC 210.52C5 applies. Thirdly, ensure that the chosen installation method, whether plugmold or wiremold, complies with all relevant NEC requirements. This includes proper grounding, conductor sizing, box fill calculations, and overcurrent protection. Fourthly, consider the aesthetic aspects of the installation. While code compliance is paramount, the receptacle outlet should be installed in a manner that is visually appealing and complements the overall design of the kitchen. Fifthly, consult with a qualified electrical inspector to ensure that the installation meets all applicable code requirements and is safe. A professional inspection can help identify any potential issues and ensure that the installation is compliant. Sixthly, use listed or labeled products. Ensure that the plugmold or wiremold and all associated components are listed or labeled by a recognized testing laboratory, such as Underwriters Laboratories Incorporated, known as UL, or Electrical Testing Laboratories, known as ETL. Seventhly, verify the spacing requirements for receptacle outlets along the countertop. NEC 210.52 code generally requires that no point along the countertop be more than 24 inches from a receptacle outlet. This requirement should be considered when determining the placement of receptacle outlets on the island. Eighthly, consider future needs. When planning the receptacle outlet installation, consider potential future needs for electrical power. Installing additional receptacle outlets or a multi-outlet strip may provide greater flexibility and convenience in the long run. Ninthly, be aware of the requirements for ground fault circuit interrupter, known as GFCI, protection. NEC 210.8 generally requires GFCI protection for receptacle outlets serving countertops in kitchens. Tenthly, ensure that the installation is accessible for maintenance and repairs. The receptacle outlet and all associated wiring should be readily accessible for future maintenance and repairs. 11thly, follow manufacturer's instructions. Always follow the manufacturer's instructions for installing plug mold, wire mold, and all other electrical components. 12thly, consider the height of the countertop. The height of the countertop may affect the placement and accessibility of the receptacle outlet. 13thly, be aware of the requirements for arc fault circuit interrupter, known as the PSI, protection. While not directly related to countertop receptacle outlet placement, a PSI protection is required for most branch circuits in dwelling units. 14thly, ensure that all electrical work is performed by a qualified electrician. Electrical work can be dangerous and should only be performed by individuals with the necessary skills and knowledge. 15thly, maintain proper documentation. Keep records of all electrical work performed, including permits, inspections, and product information. 16thly, be aware of the requirements for tamper-resistant receptacle outlets. NEC 406.12 generally requires tamper-resistant receptacle outlets in dwelling units to protect children from electrical shock. 17thly, consider the use of USB charging ports. Integrating universal serial bus, known as USB, charging ports into the receptacle outlet can provide added convenience for charging electronic devices. 18thly, ensure that the receptacle outlet is properly supported. The receptacle outlet should be securely mounted to the countertop or cabinet to prevent it from becoming loose or damaged. 19thly, consider the use of a power strip with surge protection. A power strip with surge protection can help protect electronic devices from voltage spikes and surges. 20thly, be aware of the requirements for dedicated circuits. Certain appliances may require dedicated circuits to prevent overloading the electrical system. 21st, consider the location of plumbing fixtures. The location of plumbing fixtures may affect the placement of receptacle outlets. 22nd, be aware of the requirements for lighting. Lighting is an important consideration in kitchen design and should be coordinated with the placement of receptacle outlets. 23rd, ensure that the receptacle outlet is properly labeled. The receptacle outlet should be labeled to indicate its voltage and amperage rating. 24th, consider the use of a smart receptacle outlet. A smart receptacle outlet can be controlled remotely and can provide energy monitoring capabilities. 25th, be aware of the requirements for energy efficiency. Energy efficiency is an important consideration in building design and should be considered when selecting electrical components. 26th, ensure that the receptacle outlet is compatible with the intended use. The receptacle outlet should be compatible with the type of appliances or equipment that will be plugged into it. 27th, consider the use of a recessed receptacle outlet. A recessed receptacle outlet can provide a cleaner, more streamlined appearance. 28th, be aware of the requirements for accessibility for persons with disabilities. Accessibility requirements should be considered when designing and installing receptacle outlets. 29th, ensure that the receptacle outlet is properly protected from moisture. The receptacle outlet should be protected from moisture to prevent electrical shock and damage. 30th, consider the use of a wireless receptacle outlet. A wireless receptacle outlet can be controlled remotely and can be used to automate electrical devices. Remember that electrical codes can change, so it is always important to refer to the latest edition of the NEC and any applicable local amendments. Also remember that interpretations of the code may vary, so consulting with a qualified electrical inspector or engineer is always a good practice to ensure compliance with all applicable requirements. While plug mold and wire mold are acceptable methods for installing receptacle outlets on island counters, ensure all other applicable code requirements are met, including grounding, conductor sizing, box fill calculations, and overcurrent protection.